Hello and welcome to our third Dreamcast review. Today I've been looking at a game called Rocketron, which was originally released by Astro Port on the Steam platform back in February 2020. Joshprod then obtained the rights for the game to bring it over to the Dreamcast. I think they released their physical version of the game for the Dreamcast back towards the end of November 2021. As with all Joshprod's recent releases, you can buy the game in either US Japanese or PAL packaging. There's no real difference in terms of the CDs. Both versions are region free, so it can be played on any sort of region Dreamcast. The only difference is going to be in terms of the sort of packaging. The US Japanese version has a manual that flips between the US or the Japanese sort of artwork, and the PAL version comes in sort of those larger blue cases. The version that I decided to go for was the US Japanese packaging, mainly just because it takes up less space and gives me more room to buy more of these independent games. Opening up the CD, you can see there's some lovely artwork inside the case. As with all Joshprod games, the disc has been pressed onto a CD within a factory, so it's a real sort of professional approach, and it's not sort of like a CDR. It's going to therefore hopefully put less stress on your Dreamcast drive when you're playing it. In terms of the manual, it's very basic, but then again, for this game, there's not a lot of controls. It's really sort of press a button to jump with your rocket pack, button to fire, button to access the inventory, and then the usual sort of directional controls. Okay, so I think it's time now for us to have a look at some of the gameplay. I'll return towards the end of the video and give you a quick summary of my sort of overall thoughts of the game. Rocketron was a game that I was really looking forward to Joshprod releasing, mainly because there's not sort of many 2D gun and run platform games on the Dreamcast. They were very popular, obviously, back in the sort of early 90s on sort of the Mega Drive, SNES, and Commodore Amiga. Sort of Turrican sort of springs to mind as a game that was really popular on those platforms. But yeah, there hasn't really been that many that sort of were available on the Dreamcast. I think mainly because sort of like sort of explosion of 3D games that were sort of being made at the time, and sort of an aversion to sort of doing 2D based games, which is a real shame because there's a lot of fun to be had in these type of sort of linear platform shoot and up games with some sort of puzzle elements in it. It's got a very easy sort of pick up and play game mechanics. There's sort of helpful text menus that sort of spring up when you come across things that tell you how to use your rocket pack, what sort of impact the crystals have, how to update your character in terms of their weapon upgrades, and sort of the option on your infantry to increase the sort of health or your rocket power. So overall, it's a really sort of jump in, get going, don't have to think too much, fun type of game. The sort of only real main negative of the game is sort of like the price. As mentioned at the start, it was released on Steam, and I think you can get it even for under £5 now in terms of when they've got sales on. So there is obviously quite a big jump in terms of paying for this to play it on your Dreamcast. Overall, I gave Rocketron an 8 out of 10. It's a really good, fun game. It harks back, obviously, to the 90s, turns into sort of like the 16-bit era, where you had a lot of these games sort of on the SNES, Mega Drive, and Amiga. It's a shame they didn't really sort of carry these types of games forward onto the sort of PlayStation and Dreamcast when it was sort of like the big increase in 3D games and all the sort of software houses focusing on 3D engines. I can only sort of remember things like Metal Slug sort of continuing into that sort of new era of consoles. But yeah, if you sort of want to hark back to the sort of simpler times, so it's just run along, jump, shoot things, do a bit of exploring, avoid some sort of traps and things. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun with this game. The graphics capture the sort of 16 spirit perfectly, and even the sort of music has that sort of 90s techno feel for a real sort of blast from the past. The only real drawback is obviously the price, but yeah, really, if we can have more games like this being made by Joshprod, that'd be fantastic. I think what's really good with this sort of release is it's clearly sort of filling in a gap that's sort of missing from the current Dreamcast library, and therefore it would be a welcome addition to most of your sort of software libraries. That's all, folks. If you enjoy our Dreamcast reviews, then please subscribe so you can get updates of our next upcoming reviews.